Well, Tanya, welcome to Live Your Life with Purpose podcast. I'm super excited to have you on. You are going to be the second series in this podcast segment, which I'm calling "Some Angels Don't Have Wings," and I'm calling you this and having you in this segment because really of all the amazing work that you and your team do to really go out and help people. Now, granted, this is your business, but it still is. It's doing amazing work helping people when they really need it the most. And so, I really want to talk about that. Want to thank you for all of the service that you give to others. And you've been a nurse for a long time, taking care of people for a long time. So I'm also interested to really understand how you take care of yourself. So we'll get into a lot of different things, but first, that really want to understand, when did you first realize that nursing was a career that you potentially wanted to follow?
Well, first of all, I want to tell you thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here. And we've known each other for some time, so
Hmm.
this is really nice. So I started. I was a non-traditional student. I had children, and I started off in the community college, and actually, nursing wasn't my first choice. I knew I wanted to
Mm.
go into health profession, but I wasn't really sure. And a silly thing is that one of the ways that I decided what program I was going to be, which was not nursing, was I didn't want to take speech. And then now, years later, I do so many talks with people. And but I really love nursing. So if you get me talking about nursing, I love that there's so many
Yeah.
different options and there's so
Mm.
many different areas of practice. So if one area doesn't suit someone, then you can educate yourself a little bit. Nurses are teachers, and I just loved the options for that. So
Yeah.
it's a great profession.
Yeah. Now, were you always kind of like a giving person? Did you find that as you were growing up, you just naturally found yourself kind of gravitating towards taking care of other people, or not really at all?
Well, I was the oldest in my family. It was my brother and I think that I don't know that I would have looked at it as caring. I liked babysitting. I, you know, my brother and I were, pretty independent. And so in that space, when I look back now, I realized, because I think that I did gravitate towards it. I remember when I was
Mm.
in high school, someone asked me to be a sitter at a nursing home for someone. And I mean, it wasn't something that I had ever done before. So someone saw that in me.
Mm.
And so I would go and just be a companion and take walks with this woman. And so I definitely, mine is everybody comes to my house for the holidays. Like, so, I mean, I think
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
part of that is like a leadership kind of thing, I think, and I enjoy it. I enjoy being with people and making connections and taking care of people in that way.
Yeah, and that's pretty special, and certainly at that age, I mean, um to sit down and have conversations with somebody that is much older than you don't really know, like, what am I going to talk to somebody about, or how am I going to connect? It's really special to do at that age, because even while I was taking care of mom, one of the things that all of a sudden I have a new foundational gratitude for people who help others, is because I needed so much help while I was taking care of mom. And you can't do things on your own. There's lots of different things that kind of come into it. And it's really special when people want to help others in such a capacity, where, especially going into somebody's home, which we'll talk about that. I know that you've been in home care for a long time. That's a special thing, to go in and be able to naturally be comfortable with somebody, have them feel that comfort level with you, so that, they want you to come into their home to take care of them,
Mhm.
right? Because that's, they have to want it just as much as you have to want to be able to help them, correct?
Right, right. I think, just to piggyback when you're saying that you needed the help, I think that one of the things that um, is what is most important is being the type of person that can ask for help.
Yeah.
and accept that. And it even goes back to even before I was looking at education. I knew education was very important to me, but I was a very young mom. And so I was taking care of my son, and I could have, I was a single mom, and it was difficult, but I learned, so I was babysitting, I would
Mm,
do things, but I also learned at that age to seek out people. I remember thinking I wanted to find people that were where I wanted to be. So I would
yes.
always look to them and realize that I'd surround myself with people that weren't going to say, no, you're not going to finish school. You're not going to be able to do that as a mom. Things are going to be different. And
Well,
so,
you needed that support, right? We all
right,
need help. Like,
right,
you have this idea of what you want for yourself, but it is, there's no way for any one of us to do any of the things that we do without somebody's help along the way.
right.
And that's a hard thing to start to imagine. And it's a hard thing to ask. I mean, especially for myself, there was a point where I was really too proud to ask for help because this was my journey. This was my thing that I, wanted, and certainly in taking care of mom, and to then admit or realize that I needed help. It sometimes almost feels like a failure. It almost feels like I can't do this. But it wasn't. It was really like we have to, and that's really where, for me, focusing on myself afterwards, I realized what in bad shape I was because I wasn't paying attention to what I needed. And so I found myself at the end of that journey a little lost. And I'm sure a lot of people that you work with probably sometimes or family members feel that, because you kind of get wrapped up in whatever you're doing.
I think the stress level of people that are in that situation like you were, you don't even recognize that you're, like you said, you don't even recognize that you're not taking care of yourself. And that you mentioned feeling like it was a failure to have to ask. And I deal with people all the time. And actually, it's not just our clients, but our caregivers. I had a conversation yesterday with someone, and she said, I'm embarrassed that I need help, and I'm embarrassed about this. And I think, one of the benefits, because I was so young and I was just so determined when people said I wasn't going to be able to do it, I was so determined to not, let that happen to me and to my son. But on the other side of it, it's also like I lean in on that all the time because
Hmm.
now, I mean, as you get older and you realize people wanted to help you, I'm sure. And that's the other thing is that, I try to point out to people that when, how many times, someone's going through a hard time and you say, let me know if you need anything. Well, maybe some people aren't sincere, but a lot of people are.
Hmm.
And so knowing that you can, you're giving, how people like will pay for, you go through drive up and you pay for the person behind you.
Yeah.
And I did that one time. And what was really interesting was that the person in I did that, and I could tell it was the manager. And the manager looked at me and he said, thank you for doing that because you blessed my day as well, not just the
Mm,
person. And I thought it's so true. Like when we're ever
yeah.
part of all of those interactions, you asking someone for help, bless them to be part of that,
Hmm.
to be part of your journey. And people, I mean, people want to help most of the time if they have the
Yeah.
ability to do so.
They really do, and even instead of sometimes just asking for help, because that's just the natural tendency, we want to help, and it's just like, well, what can we do? Sometimes just saying, hey, I'd love to make a dish for you so that you guys don't have to think about that. What's your favorite meal?
Mhm.
Or type of thing. You know what I mean? And then that way it just takes the burden off of somebody having to still ask for help even though they want it, because sometimes that's just a hard thing to
I
do,
know.
is just to have that ask. But yeah, no. And so you have, it looked like, I mean, have you been in home care for the majority of your nursing career, or how did that start for you?
So when I was in nursing school, I I needed to continue to work. But I really, and I compartmentalize things now too. So I took the home health aide training course during one of
Hmm.
my school breaks. And it was wonderful because it gave me the opportunity to be able to work focus on school during the week. And then of course, not a lot of people wanted to work weekends, but I loved it because then I could, I worked on a hospice team. And so I would tell them to like book me from the morning till evening. And I wasn't really considering home care as my area of practice. At that time, it was almost 30 years ago, but at that time, everybody said you have to work in the hospital for a year. So I kind of figured that I was going to finish school, and I did work in the hospital for a little bit, but
Yeah.
I found right away that relationship that you make with people. And at that time, a lot of time I would go in the morning sometimes and help somebody get going, hospice clients, and then I'd be back in the evening. And it's just so different. And so even after I got a job in a hospital and I fast tracked into management, I would always have my own private clients on the side, because you just develop a different rapport with people, and you become part of their extended family while you're still trying to be professional and everything. But I loved it. And so I say now, it's like, you think about the routines that you have during, like, we all do it every day. You get up at this whatever time, and your routines, like you get your coffee at this time, whatever that is. And you get to know people in a different way. And I don't know, that connection's always like stayed with me. So in some
amazing.
form or another, I have worked in other settings as well, but I always had the home care on the side, my side gig.
And it really is, it's such a different level of nursing, having done a lot of nurse recruiting as well. And it's because there's an avenue for nursing for every personality type, which is great because it's needed, because there's so many different ways that people need that type of help. And
it's
so
definitely an independent practice in home care, because you don't have somebody to like run down the hall and say,
to ask a quick question, or to say, hey, if you have to ask a question, it's going to take a little while. So you have to rely on, your own things. And now, so one thing that when we talked, very on when we first started connecting, after the journal and talking about things, you mentioned that you very early on learned to write down what were your 6 priorities every day, and then kind of work from that. And so how did that kind of come about for you?
So actually it was, that's a premise that Mary Kay Ash of Mary Kay Cosmetics does this. And it's one of the things that she said. And I remember hearing it and I thought it made so much sense. And so I've always been someone who's like written down a to-do list and, tried to organize my thoughts. And a lot of times it was related to school, and trying to, I love education too. So I was just trying to like balance those things. So I'd write those things down. And then I really liked that idea, because whether you do it the night before or you do it that morning, it really kind of focuses you, and it gives you, it's like some time to reflect. And I think as I've gotten older and more mature and knowing myself, I think that I've changed some of that practice, but I still do that. I still do 6 things, because it gives you some sense of accomplishment at the end of the day, but it also gives you some focus. Like, you're not going to get everything done. You're never going to get everything done. So I like to kind of say, and I balance that with even family things. So it might be like, these are, this was one of my 6 things today. So, it gives you just like focus as you're planning your day, but it also is kind of nice to look back on it and say, oh yeah, I did accomplish that.
And it's such a huge thing to give yourself, because of a couple of different reasons, right? Like, we can all look at negative things that happen to us and kind of dwell in those spaces. But when we start to give ourselves like, okay, this is what I'm going to get done today. And then when we do it, we feel really good about accomplishing that. And so when people are setting goals, that's why it's such a great thing to have a mixture of short-term, long-term goals. Things are easy to kind of hit those check marks right off the bat so that you can gain momentum. And then, you feel like, okay, well, if I do this for myself and these choices and these actions take me here, then if I keep on focusing on the things that, drive my passion, and obviously nursing is a passion, giving back to people is a passion for you, you figure out how to incorporate that into all aspects of your life. And so, having a child was a passion and a priority, and something that obviously, was a number one reason about how, okay, now I have to take care of this individual. But that didn't mean that you let any of those other things go. You just figure out a way that you made it all work for yourself.
Mhm.
And that's the amazing thing. And that's where, again, we all have that ability to kind of carve that path and drive our own bus. And it's just a matter of giving ourselves the tools and the ability to do that. Right.
Yeah, and I think, family's always been, a high priority. And when I was thinking last week, it's like we've all gotten through our worst, what we thought could have been our worst day. And somehow you look back and all of those things that you're going through on a day-to-day basis don't hold so much weight.
Yeah.
And, so, there are challenging days now, and they're always going to be. That's how we grow. But when you look back on it and say, all of those days that I thought were so terrible, so I'll lean back on that. But then I have a marriage and I have 4 children now, and all of those things, and grandchildren, but in my practice. And so just kind of, you didn't ask me to give a plug for your journal, but I will tell you that that took me to a different place too. And I shared this with you, that one of the things that I hadn't done, so I would do my 6 things, and I would try to always do the reflection. One of the things I liked about journaling, which was different than what I was doing before, is so I do my 6 things and write my to-do list, and then I get rid of it. So now I don't. So now I still do my 6 thing in a different place, but I do have
Yeah.
a journal. And it's nice to look back and say, okay, you have a place. What did you learn yesterday? And going back and looking at last week, because sometimes it seems, of course, to me that you'll have like one day and then it's like a couple bad days and then you start like feeling this heaviness. But then you look back and you
Hmm.
say, oh my gosh, I did a lot. Or I'm reflecting back saying, you know what, I should have exercised more, because 2 weeks ago, this exactly happened. One of my reflections was I dealt with stress so much better because I exercised more. And then what do I do the next week? You fall back a little bit. And it's so easy to do that. And then it's really nice because it refocuses. And I don't think any of us are ever going to get perfect with that, but it's nice to be able to kind of go back and here are my successes. What am I working on this week?
Hmm.
So,
It's just a great place to always go back to, right? Like, and
right.
that's where, throwing it out, we have short-term memory. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we think happens versus what actually happens are completely different. So if we have this place where we can measure things by giving ourselves some direction and then reflecting on how did that go, then that's perfect. And it doesn't have to, we don't have to do this to beat ourselves up. And I think that that's what ultimately sometimes we do to ourselves, and that's why it doesn't feel good. This was never a place where I was like, okay, well, how am I going to beat myself up to drive in something for next week? Like, no, this was just about understanding what I enjoyed, what I thought would make a successful week, and then just saying, hey, did I do those things? Did I do the activities that I wanted to do in order to reach the goals that I wanted to achieve? And if not, then why? And that's it. And what am I
Right.
going to
Because you
do
might look at it
next?
and say, maybe that wasn't as important as I thought. And
Exactly.
in the
And
scheme of things, maybe something came up that really I needed to take care
took
of.
a higher priority at that
Right.
time, where you consciously made a decision to not do that because this was a higher priority. But unless you have these ideals and have these thoughts, then we don't ever know when we're going off course because we haven't really set a direction. And that's really what I love about what you've always given yourself, is a direction, and an ability to kind of work through this. One thing that you said that I completely agree with is just talking about kind of perception and timing. And there was one thing that I saw one time where Oprah was talking to a group, I think of Stanford students, and I've tried to find the clip and I've searched it for years and I can't find it anywhere. But she was talking about this place that no matter how good things are or how bad things are, it's only a moment in time. And
Mhm.
so by the time that we get to reflect back on everything that happens, what you're going through right now is not as bad or it's not as good as you think it is. And it helps you level off this, like, okay, I might be in a little bit of a ditch right now, but I've proven to myself and I keep proving to myself that I come out of that ditch. And
Hmm.
that's really where I think that it's important. We have the ability to look back and say, yeah, I have 100% success rate of coming through things that I didn't think that I could come through.
Right.
And that's
Right.
powerful. And
It
that's
is.
where having the journal where you can
Yeah.
write in helps you kind of, when you're in those bad spaces, realize that you've come through worse probably.
Right.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
Absolutely.
And so being in home care, you can lose taking care of yourself,
Hmm.
and that's one thing that I know that we've talked to your team a couple of
Hmm.
times on taking care of yourself. So did you ever find there was times where you weren't taking care of yourself? How have you always kind of um, made sure that you were giving yourself what you needed?
I think it's very easy to do that when we're caregivers tend to do that. I mean, nurses are kind of known for not really taking the greatest care of themselves, I think, because of the stress level sometimes.
Sure.
But I will sometimes go off track, but I always kind of come back to what I know. And um, I think about this past year and all of the challenges that everybody had, and whether you're eating too much or not exercising. And in the beginning, I remember I was saying to myself, we're going to have this time off. I'm going to be able to walk every day more often. And then it is easy to fall back in those things. So
Hmm.
for me personally, I have to do that. Like I have to refocus. I think, you probably may recall that I have for our office staff, we have a 32-hour work week. It's a 4-day work week,
Yep.
because I'm really, and I mean, you could talk to any of my staff members. I get really upset if people aren't really taking that time or if they're trying to work on that day. I don't, I mean, I'm the owner, so it's different.
Hmm.
But I really try to take time and then to find the things that I like. And so that was the other thing is that a few years ago, I remember I met with a nutritionist and it was like, just thinking about like, I like walking. I've tried to be a runner. I'm just not a runner. I'm just not. So
Yeah.
I walk, I do yoga. I love to cook.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because I talk to other people who don't like cooking. And to me, that's so relaxing. Like there's nothing that makes me happier
For
than
me,
like,
that's
yeah,
baking. I do
yeah,
like to cook,
yeah,
but that's not as relaxing as baking is for me.
yeah,
I love to get lost in baking a cake or
yeah. My
cupcakes
daughter is
or
like
all of
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, I think that's what it is. And I get right caught up in I make so another gift of home care is I've been in so many homes and while people are cooking, so I have all these great recipes from different
Hmm.
people. And so I'll make something and I remember the person that taught me how to make it.
That
And,
might be a nice little almost kind of book to put together
yeah,
that could be part of silver linings
yeah, yeah,
type
that's
of a
true.
thing. That
That's
would be,
true.
because it's such a, I mean, that's such a gift for people to share, right? Like that's one thing that is such a welcoming thing when, I don't know, when anybody comes into your house to feed them, right? Like,
Oh
thank you
yeah.
for coming over, here's some food, and so
I
that's,
actually have like Nana's sauce recipe. So sometimes I'll call up, and even during COVID, I'll call up the family members, and just making it like brings me close. I feel
yeah,
closer to her. But
yeah.
then in addition to that, I'll call up the family members and the grandchildren and say, "Hey, do you want Nana's sauce?" Oh, and it brings it back to everybody. It is such a gift, and yeah, I love feeding. We haven't had as many family dinners.
Of course.
If I could go back to the old days and do Sunday dinner every week, that nothing would make me happier. But
Well,
everybody gets busier, and
hopefully it's in the near future where,
yeah,
just even with COVID, because it's so tough.
yeah,
Like and I'm like a hugger. So when I see people, I want to give them a
I know,
hug. How you doing?
I know,
And it's so weird to just see people, especially like close friends. And it's just like, how you doing? It's just not me. It's weird.
I
It's,
know.
it's so difficult.
I hope I'm eternal optimist, and I hope
Yeah.
we're like on the
Yeah.
even just and the other thing during this time is in New England we always want spring. We're always so ready for spring. Never mind. But then you couple it with not seeing people that you loved over the
Mm,
holidays and all of this fear and loss and all of that. So I just, it's just nice to even it's a beautiful day outside today.
that's
Got
it.
promise of spring, but it's.
I do a lot of rowing, and so I just the past couple of days, today will be the same because after this I'm going to go row. And I took the rower on the back deck
I was,
and it just rowed. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so nice to just be outside and have some of that fresh air and sun. But I do that all winter just because it always feels good, regardless of how cold it is. The sun
right.
always feels good, and the fresh air always feels good. So I always try to get
Very
outside.
grounding. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing is when we get kind of crazy, there's nothing better. I was talking to one of our managers, and she said, "Oh, I don't have time." Like, we have time, and take a break, go for a walk. It really, like, it resets your mood, and we have to do it. It's very
Hmm.
grounding, and I just back to saying, like, taking care of ourselves. We have time. Like, I know that when you don't take the time, your head is clearer. You can exercise, or I'll go for a walk, or even just like
Just
spring is here. It grounds you and refocuses.
just even some of the things that I just even meditation,
Hmm.
even meditating for 5 minutes helps you just stop thinking. And so going for a walk is great both physically and mentally, because listen to a radio or focus in on a thought. Maybe you are thinking about something, and it lets you kind of get out of the space that you're in and start thinking about something a little bit differently. And so if there is anything that I suggest to people, if you could do one thing every single day for yourself, and if you have the ability to get out and go for a 10 to 15-minute walk every day, such a benefit for your physical health as well as your mental health.
It's hard to look when you're outside and to realize, and just nature and hearing birds and
Hearing
looking
a
up at the
bird.
sky or looking at the ocean. It's just like it kind of takes you out of, like, okay, this is like, we're one little piece of this. And you think about when you step back and think that we are living on a ball that's like turning around. And you look outside and you're saying, what, it really, I think it gives me a lot of perspective too. I think that's like great advice. And
It's huge perspective to
yeah,
realize like we're significant and insignificant all at the same time,
right,
and
right.
that's which is great, which is exactly what the way that it should be. Because um the thing that, and I think that journaling allowed me to realize, was that I spent about 40 years of my life really not being very focused on my priorities or the things that gave me passion, and just kind of existing in the world and having some success and all of that stuff, but not really um, having good definition around it. And once I started to give that to myself, things really really changed. And one thing that I found while I was going through that process with mom is gratitude. And I know that we've talked
Mhm.
that's something that you have practice in, and I think that that's also something that really helps me stay very grounded. And have you found that for yourself? Just having a daily gratitude practice allows you to kind of not necessarily worry about some of the things,
Right.
you know, even though
Well,
they're significant, but they don't make them as big as they are, right?
yeah, I think that um, there's always, like, you look around and for whatever. And I think because I had like some life experiences that were more difficult, um, than my life is now. I think I am grateful that I have a home. I'm grateful that I have a
Hmm.
yard. All those things, but just to kind of name those things for yourself is really, um, because again, we can get caught up. I remember when I was first a visiting nurse, and I was working at a VNA and I wasn't doing the private duty, we would go into homes that there might be 5 people, with kids sleeping in one bed to keep themselves warm.
Mm.
And so I think it's very easy when you get really busy to not stop and think about, how much we do have to be grateful for, even during this time.
Hmm.
And, I said all the time, we had shutdown last year. Who would have thought that it would go on like this? But there are good things that have come out of it, and the silver lining. And, I think even in the most difficult situations, and you definitely had that with your mom. And I think anybody that met you at that time that you didn't think that you were folks, I mean, you were giving. I think we all do that, but not having like your mindset in the right place, or where you wanted it to be, really like
Yeah.
changed. But I meet people every day that are handling more than they ever thought that they could.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad. There are some really sad, stories that that I feel bad. I wish we could do more. I met with a friend the other day, and my heart breaks. This isn't what you signed up for, and somehow you get through, and it does make you stronger. And there are those times, and would imagine that you realize now that if someone had told you what you were going to go through, that you'd question whether you could do it. But then when you look back, there's some gifts in, like, even illness and the hardest things. And you look back and you say, oh my God, like I had a beautiful experience because of this terrible disease.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and sorry, I just get a little bit of emotional when I think about it
Mhm.
because um I look back and I don't know how I would do that again.
I know.
But I would, and that's the crazy thing is that I would 100% do those 6 years over again because of not only because of giving that gift to mom, like giving her this place of comfort and security that she gave to me, because it really, at the end of it, became this really poetic thing for me
Mhm.
that um, was remarkable, right? It really became this gift, not just for me, but for her, because of, and I say my father taught me so much in life. But one of the greatest things that I learned came at a time where my mother didn't even realize that she was teaching me these things. And
Mhm.
but one of the greatest things that I had through all of that was gratitude, because those 6 years were some of the most difficult of my life, if not the most difficult time in my
Mhm.
life. Um, and you think back of like, okay, and this is where I draw all of the strength that I do now, because if I spent 6 years doing that, then what is this? This is nothing compared to that. And so that
Mhm.
allows me to know that whatever I face in life from here on in, that I have the strength to take care of it.
Mhm.
Because yeah, we don't know that we can handle these things until we're in the middle of it, but we need a lot of help. And finding gratitude and being able to be grateful for giving her this allowed me to handle where I was at and deal with the financial loss and just the emotional loss, all of these different things that you start to deal with.
Mhm.
Um, but speaking of silver linings, one of the things that I really want to connect on is I love the name and I love the concept of really why the name is what it is for you. But what got you thinking about starting this business for yourself?
So I worked for I've gotten other private duty home care company, one in particular. I helped them get it off the ground, and I loved it.
Mm,
It's very different. I've done other types of nursing care, visiting nurse, where you kind of go in, somebody has, a knee replacement, and we go in and, make sure that they're doing well and they have therapy and all of that, but you don't develop those long-term relationships.
yeah.
And so on the side, like I said, I've always had my side gigs. I did pediatric nursing. And so I had two very special patients. For all of my patients are special, but two that I had for a very long time. And I learned so much from them. And I'm grateful, that I had that experience. So I would have these other jobs. And private duty is definitely it's a niche, because of those things, and making, I always say, like, I make connections, but I learned
Hmm.
from those girls that were facing really difficult things, but we had fun too, so I mean, I wouldn't be who I am. I mean, like, there's lots of things as a mom, as a nurse, all of these things, but I thought that I could do better. So there are some things that really, I think, help us stand out from the way that some other agencies work. And so I was happy working in other ones, but then it was just like, you know what, I'm going to try this on my own. I have can do it spirit. And I thought, no one can take my nursing degree away from me. And so I can, see how this works. But it's about the connection. So it's not just, so we really, And I'm just not saying, like, I love having nursing students. I love having caregivers that might be going through a challenge and are able to do that, and I can connect them. I go into the families and I say, I'm kind of a matchmaker, and some of my elderly clients get a twinkle in their eye. I'm like, not that kind of matchmaker. But just it really is. So, when I look at the silver linings, it first came from one of my biggest passions is hospice care. And as you know, it's very difficult watching people go through that. But and I remember people used to ask me when I worked on a hospice team how I did that. And I thought, I think people have the misperception that the nurses and the staff members that work with terminally ill people somehow are stronger. I mean, I remember sitting around a like our, weekly meeting, and they would say, so-and-so passed last night, and everybody would go, oh. Well, everybody knew that. I mean, that's the deal. If you're, getting that kind of care, that is ultimately going to be the outcome. But knowing that you might have made it a little bit easier, comforted someone medically, or said to the family, this is okay, this is normal,
and as somebody that certainly had that, it's an amazing gift for family, because I remember there was one time where I was working from home, trying to take care of mom and financially pay bills and all of that stuff. So there was a huge challenge with all of that. But I remember walking out of my office one time after a meeting and seeing this woman reading a book, holding my mom's hand. And, my mother was just laid back in her chair with her eyes closed and her feet wiggling like she normally would. But just the fact that she was holding her hand and reading her a book really made that so... seeing that really just had an effect on me, because it was just like, thank you for just giving her some comfort right now, and having that connection, of holding her hand was amazing. So they do amazing work, and it really is, it takes a special person to really give comfort at that stage in life.
Well, I think somehow it's like when you talk with other people that have gone through similar things, you're not going to change the outcome, but it's also like you kind of feel like you're all in it together. And and I'm sure that caregiver, as I said, like the blessings are all around. The silver linings are, I've gotten to know some wonderful people. And, I had a woman a couple of weeks ago, and she kept saying to me, I don't think that you realize what you did by pulling together this care so quickly for my husband and the quality of his life, because you assigned that caregiver. And the caregiver, stayed with her after her husband had passed. They weren't able to have family around. There wasn't family close by, and then everybody's worried about COVID. So there really are. So I think that's when I look and I say there are silver linings. Like you meet people, and then of course I was like the silver hair kind of thing, and I don't know. I think that, I wouldn't, for you to be and have her at home, like you said, like you walked out, you were at work, she could have been in a facility, not to say that there might have been somebody in the facility that would be able to hold her hand, but it's just nice to be able to be present and see that if that's something that you're able to do. And you were talking about the financial thing and everything. That's the other thing I remind people. I actually try to remind the caregivers that work for us that, when you go into a grocery store and somebody's like in a bad mood, and, people are like just not nice to each other. And I think to myself all the time, you never know. And now people like have all the little quotes and everything. You never know what people are going through, but I know for sure that I would be taking care of people that either their mother or their husband or whatever is in a bed in their living room, because that's where they have the space. And then they have to go to work, because the rest of your life doesn't stop. And so you still have to pay your bills, and you still have to pay your mortgage, and your car breaks down. And in addition to that, and I see that with a lot of families that have disabled children, in addition to all the other things that we're going through, they're trying to manage all of these things, and it's heavy, but then if you can, we still do, like, you try to have a sense of humor, and you try to saying, we're doing the best we can, but it can be a burden. But I think with the support, we're lucky. It's not just me. So I'm lucky that I do have, I'm lucky that I had a caregiver that was a perfect fit for that woman that called me.
Yeah.
And it just worked. And somehow, and again, like the caregiver was very happy to be there. They'll usually, they get connected, and you probably found this, they'll get connected and they're willing to do more time.
Of course.
So it really is. It's about the connections. And
Mm-hmm.
I've said, we're a growing agency. We have another location, but I keep focusing on the fact that I'd rather be smaller and give the most exceptional care. And
Then get too big and not be able to do what you
it's
want
hard, that
to. Yeah, the
personalized,
balance.
it's because you want to be able to touch more people, but I don't want to lose what makes us unique,
Unique. Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking of, so you guys have been in business for, is it
This is our 7th
8 years?
year. Yeah.
7 year?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And have grown to a Cape Cod location, which is fantastic. But a lot of this also revolves around the fact that, like, what you get you like to spend time in both of the locations. So, what I love is that, you had this place of where, being a single parent and facing a lot of obstacles to now being in a place in life where, you have continued to move through and set new goals for yourself and open up a business and then open up a second location, which then also allows you to, spend time at another place that you enjoy. And so this is what is fun. And this is what I also, not only with the amazing work that you do, but what an inspiration for other people to look up to and say, hey, listen, things didn't look so good when I was here facing a lot of different obstacles, and I didn't let that stop me from now being in this place in life. And life is hard. I mean, life is always going to be hard, whether you're in this place or you're in this place, and it's just a matter of picking your heart, right?
Yeah, I feel like you create your own, we all have the ability to create our own opportunities. And and don't get me wrong, I had, some years that were challenging, but I also have
Of
a
course.
wonderful husband. We've been married for 35 years, and, a family and a supportive family. But there were times at that time that, that again, I leaned back in on, because I got through them. I mean, there was a time where I didn't know where I was going to live
Yeah.
and all of these things, but I do love Cape Cod. And I have a lot of family down there, and my uncle that lives down there said, I know why you didn't stop in Worcester, but it's kind of nice when you take your like little walk every day and it's near the beach. And so, you do, like, I've created what I wanted to do, and I've always like gone out and taken risks that I thought, oh, let's see how this is going to turn out. And, it usually turns out fine. And
Yeah.
sometimes you might take a twist along the way, and it was a little scary, but, I think, it's the same premise that we have here, but it's just like, that's kind of where I want to be too. And
Yeah.
I also worry, because we have this Western Mass location, that this is where this is where I grew up. So it's not as if but I feel like I'm at a place in my life. I have a lot of wonderful people that are like supporting this mission.
Yeah.
And then we have some fun, while we're doing it.
That's perfect. And so, as we get to wrap up, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really do appreciate all of it. But there's a couple of things that I do want to focus on, and I think that it's great because it allows you to be this role model through your actions, things that you have done, allows other people to look up and want to emulate that. And so that's wonderful. A couple of questions that I have that I always loved to answer at various or ask at various times when I was recruiting, but two things, personally and professionally, aside from, your kids and your family, what are you most proud of personally and professionally that you've been able to do for yourself?
So personally, it has to be back to my family, because I feel, and actually I should say my education. So
Yeah.
at one point, when I was young, and I had my first child, I remember, and I was in high school, I'll be honest, I was in high
Hmm.
school, and people said, you're not going to be able to finish school. And as you know, I did. So I was able to do that. I graduated with my class. And so I was really proud of that. And then I kind of got on this mission. And so I ended up, I think I got so attached to learning,
Mm.
because even if you're in a program, so I kept going. I remember after I finished, I have a dual master's. When I finished that, I was approached about like going into a doctoral program. I'm like, no. But so I'm very proud that I kept going. I'm very proud that I kept going and that I didn't let other people's opinions define what I was going to do.
I love
And I,
that.
and I think that that's the other thing professionally. So a lot of people will say, how many businesses there are? Do you know how many home cares there are? Everybody's opening them. And I just don't even pay attention. And so if I start to pay attention, I bring myself back because it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. Like I'm not
Hmm.
going to let those things
And
stop
some,
me,
yeah,
you
and
know?
sometimes those opinions and those things are, they could be out of jealousy, they could be out of, there's lots of different reasons why people are going to say some different things to you that don't really apply. And you just have to follow your gut, right? Your intuition of what is right for you. And how can that ever be wrong?
Well, I think that when people do that, many times I'm sure that they're coming from a place of, it could be like a place of love and that they have concern, but
Hmm.
I don't let other people like spread their fear all over me because, and I do, when you were saying like your intuition, that I will tell you is probably the one thing, because I thought
Hmm.
when I was young that I was put here to do something and that I was going to follow that. And so if I don't follow my intuition, that's the only time I get into trouble. I do it when I'm
Hmm.
hiring people. I do it when I'm making decisions about whether or not we need to like change course, and that's personally or professionally. And it's really, I don't want to say it's not that hard, but honestly, if you tap into that, you're not going to
Hmm.
ever go wrong. And I just kind of bless and release that, if someone has, if they have, it might be their own fears.
Yeah,
And
totally. Yeah.
then, or maybe they couldn't do that. And so, and then the other thing professionally is I feel like I really am a collaborator. And so, there are people, as you know, that are in this area that like, I'm happy to work with other, I mean, they're competitors, we're friendly competitors, but I live trusting that there's abundance.
Mm.
And I mean, I know it sounds, I mean, I know this is what you're doing, but there's
No, but
abundance, there's enough
there's
for all
enough
of
for all
us.
of us. Yeah.
And so I don't let that get me down. And so I'm not saying I don't, because I still have hard days. I still question every day. And so, like there are times, and then other times, as you said, like you get through these days and then I tell myself, I've gotten through all the other ones. This is just something I need to work through, and then not giving up, just
Mm.
saying, I know I'm supposed to be doing this. And just continuing to move forward and reflect where, I need to work on myself.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, this is fantastic. And again, I truly appreciate your time because, hearing you talk about all of these different things and being so kind of open and honest about all of it allows other people to realize that, they can do the same thing, even regardless of a situation that they may be in, that they feel is maybe overwhelming at times, that, you can be in a situation and still move yourself exactly where you want to go in life. And so, I applaud you for being, a strong female role model for all of those people to look up to, because, we need to celebrate that more so that others, young girls out there, know that, again, they can go out there and achieve all of these different things. So thank you for all of
thank
the
you.
work that you do, not just in that aspect, but then really with work. It touches me in a place that I'm extremely grateful for, even though I'm not even remotely part of it. I appreciate all that you do for those that need it, and so thank you for that.
You are part of it. And I think, I thank you for coming to talk to our team and everything. And I don't know about all that and the role model, but I mean, I do think that we all, you don't have to look too far to see somebody that's like had a harder time and they made it and they made
Mm-hmm.
their dreams come true. So I think
Mm-hmm.
just being open and paying attention and, journaling and reflecting and exercising, I don't know, but
Excellent.
so, well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Tanya. This has been fantastic. I'll have some other information for people at the end of this so that they'll know how to get in contact with you and reach you um, for whatever they may need.
Okay.
So
All right,
excellent.
Scott, take
Well,
care.
thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your
Okay.
day.
All right. I'm gonna